Hello everyone. It's Tuesday, February 17th, 2015, and this is another Playscii dev update. It's been a little while. I diverted for a few days to work on some stuff to update my Patreon page and stuff with, but recently I've been back into development, and I wanted to show off what I've got here straight away. This is this is Game Engine, or game mode, which is something that I've been building to for a while, and it took some unique work to get here, but yeah. So these owls are going a little goofy, but it shows a scene comprised of multiple pieces of art that have different Z layers and different objects that I can move around. And just for test here, I've got it so that my little controllable player here, I can move them in Z as well as X and Y, which is cool. And then here I've got an object that is generated at runtime and whose art tiles are being updated by a script, our old friend, the mutate change one tile every frame script. And then these owls here are just, they're kind of a stand-in for a numerous on-screen object, and they're doing a whole, they're just changing their position and stuff, and they're playing an animation that is keyframe, or not keyframe, but frame-by-frame animation. So this is a separate mode for the editor. Let me open up, I think I've already got most of these. No, maybe not. Anyway, one of the reasons you'll see that this is one of the reasons that this is kind of significant is because it's just it's the live game being editable. Well, of course that thing is behind the other thing, so I can't exactly see it. But I can edit things just kind of arbitrarily. So I can make a big shape in the background here and then jump right back into game mode, and it shows up kind of immediately. I can open up my little player graphic, and I can update their art as well, and it updates just live on the fly. So yeah, so that's the more obvious ramification of what this means. It also means that all of these are different objects, and they're sorting correctly. Previously, and back in edit mode here, the sorting situation is kind of a mess where it doesn't really have any logic about what order to draw things in or anything, and I knew that I was going to need to crack that nut. I'll jump to the code that's making this happen. It's yeah, it actually goes through, and I've got a new function in the game thing here. Let's see, this is the code that brings up the test scenario where it just loads in the specific art, positions these objects, and then just kind of gets them going. And then the rest of it is in the game object class here, which at the moment is very simple. The owls that are moving around are really just looking at the elapsed time and then just kind of changing with a sine wave or something. That's actually most of the expense of this 11 milliseconds that the game is using for processing right now. The actual rendering side of it is pretty light. And then the particle thing is just saying, hey, run the mutate script every 10th of a frame, like we did all the way back, a month and a half ago, really. So, whoops. So let's go to game render here, because that's where a little bit of this magic is happening. So it goes through all of the loaded game objects that we've created, and then it says, okay, what's for each layer in each of these? What's this layer's Z? And then turn those into a little item for the renderer, and then sort them according to the Z, and then draw them all back to front. So it's pretty simple, really. I have no doubt that this this game render thing will become more complex to account for things like state changes and all that. Like one of the things, but yeah, for the moment it's sorting in Z, which actually makes it so that when these owls fly back in Z, or when my little player here goes back into Z, they actually you know, they pop in and out and they sort correctly and all that. Yeah, like for instance, a cooler version of this renderer might be able to look at all of this and say, well, yeah, this is all the same character set and it's all the same palette. So we could draw like everything like this without changing any of these uniforms or without rebinding the textures and stuff. And I'm not actually sure how much of a speed increase that would be. I kind of need to research that. But it's now its own separate thing. And that's cool. Another thing that I did just now that it's pretty easy to have, when I was creating this art, which it might be familiar to you as like a weird homage, color palette-wise at least, from an old beloved game, Another World, or Out of This World in the US. I was like, you know, I was working with this kind of artwork, and I was like, yeah, I've got all these different layers, but they're kind of hard to keep up with. So I added this feature, which I can cycle through. I can say all the non-active layers are either fully visible, they're dim, and so see here if I'm working on this thing, I can be, I can paint on this, I can go to another layer and paint on this, or I can just tell it only the active layer right now is the only layer that I care about seeing. And that's pretty valuable because when you're doing something, I realized as soon as I had made a multi-layered piece of artwork like this, that, you know, it's impossible to tell what you're doing sometimes because you don't know what layer you're on, or it's kind of hard to see. You want to see it in context, or you don't want to see it in context. Maybe you just want to say, I want to see this thing just a little bit behind here. So yeah, that's all cool. What else did I do? I split out the main application here had an input function that was like as long as the rest of the class code itself, and that was getting kind of unwieldy, and so I created a new class called Input Lord, because anything, instead of being a manager, it's always a lord in the Playscii code base. Just that's my one little bit of having fun with the naming convention. Plus it's fewer characters. And one of the things, a lot of the things that are in the Input Lord's input function here is just the same as the stuff that was there before, like getting the state of the mouse and saving that to the app so that other things can look at it. But then there is something like these few lines of code right here, and then I guess like these up here, like these little bits right here. Read in a file. This is the default template from which the other gets created, but then it creates another one that looks exactly like this. These are just all of the binds in the editor, and there'll probably be a separate little table for the game once it has like controller and keyboard bindings and stuff like that. But yeah, it's just a very simple, like pretty human readable. I feel like somebody who doesn't know a lot about Python could just edit this if they wanted to change how the keyboard worked, like if they wanted to adapt it to a different international keyboard layout or something. And yeah, like I wanted to use, like instead of using SDL codes, SDL key codes or something inhumane like that, I just wanted to have a nice plain English syntax, and so that's what it does here. And it says, it parses each of those little binds and says, hey, if it's shift or whatever. And it tries to make capitalization not matter. It does have to match up with what SDLs get string from keyname. Oh yeah, I've got it in this. Anyway, yeah, if you want to mess with that and do your own custom binds, then you absolutely can. I wasn't actually doing this for the nicety of other users besides myself. I actually did it just because the gigantic switch case that I had back in the main class was just getting too big and unwieldy, and it had like these sort of trumping orders where it's like, oh, I have to make sure to put the code, if I want something on S, but Control S already does something, I have to make sure I put the normal S after the Control S thing, and there were all these like trumping rules and stuff like that, and that's garbage. Don't do that. And so I made it so that, yeah, it really does just it associates these functions. Oh, and then the other part of it is all of this. Now this is a whole bunch of like little rinky-dink functions that are kind of boilerplate. I mean, the function names themselves are boilerplate, like basically like toggle console here. That corresponds with something, yeah, with with this guy up here. And so anytime you want to create a new bindable command, you just add a function like this, and then you add a new line to the keybinds file, and that's it, actually. That's really all you have to do. So that's a lot nicer for me. Like if I'm experimenting with control schemes, I can rebind all of that quickly instead of having to edit like, oh, SDL key codes and this complicated thing, and if I get a you know, an indentation level wrong or something, it might mess up. So no more of that, and that's cool. It's not the most glamorous thing in the world, but it had been on my list, and it's cool. So I think we've proceeded, much as we render this scene from back to front. I've gone from the most visually interesting, neato, awesome whiz-bang demo to the most boring but awesomely utilitarian thing. And I think that's all I've got for now. Yeah, so this is game mode, and it's a lot of different things coming together, and it looks a little ridiculous at the moment, but it shows that it's given me enough confidence that I think I can go on with the rest of the UI work that I had planned, which is, what was it? Yeah, that's right. I was going to do a mock-up for the menu bar back in edit mode here. There's going to be a menu bar along the top with pull-down menus, and maybe a little dialogue that pops up that you can type numbers into where that's needed. And also for the animation and layer list thing at the bottom, where you can see all of the frames of animation that you have and the different layers that you have in the document. And you can change the ordering of those layers and add frames of animation and all that. That was another reason that it was good that I did this work to make sorting work correctly, is that I can now render individual layers of a thing. You know, I can render only this layer at a time. And that will be necessary to do thumbnails of animation frames and different layers. So all of this is clearing the path ahead, which is awesome. I love it. And yeah, so that's about all I've got for now. Thank you very much, Patreon, new and existing Patreon patrons. Your contributions are helping me continue doing this thing, and I'm very grateful for that. This is at the end of the video, so a lot of people probably stopped watching, but if there's anybody that you think would be interested in this, in what I'm doing and supporting me on Patreon, please spread the word. I've been trying to, these past few days, I took time off from the game to try and spruce up the site and make the pitch a little clearer and update it, show some of this progress I've been making and stuff like that. But I think a lot of people who could potentially be patrons still don't know about it, and more patronage would definitely help give me more runway and make my living expenses go a little further each month. So that's my plug. But yeah, thank you very much for watching. I'm excited about all of this progress, and I'm eager to get right back into it. So yeah, thank you for watching, and have a lovely evening. Thanks, bye.